Welcome back to Man Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling, and should we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today in a very late night episode of Animal Crossing. Of course, not usually this late, but I was procrastinating doing recording, I'm going to be perfectly honest. Busy most of the day and then procrastinating. That's us, that's how it goes, to be perfectly honest. Sometimes you're just like, am I in the mood to record an Animal Crossing episode today? And the answer is, yes, but not yet. So here we are, in the final twilight hours, I suppose, before the day rolls round to Friday. Friday, gotta get down on Friday, the 14th of July, as a buying time for Isabel here. Good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhollow, it's 11:41pm on Thursday, July 13th, 2023. What should we talk about today? Oh, I don't know if I actually brought this up, but I've had, I guess we're talking about Bruises. I mean, you can probably tell from the title. I mean, it's almost like you got sort of like a precognition because you see the title, so you know what I'm talking about in advance. But no, I've had this, bruise on my right thigh. I was like, what part of my leg is this? My right upper thigh for, it's been, a week or two now, which is wild to think. Basically, all that really happened is as I walked into a table, and I walked into a table really quite hard, harder than I expected, because it's weird because it didn't hurt at the time I did it. Obviously it stung a little bit, and anytime you get any sort of bruise, you're like, ow, a little bit, but it wasn't like I was doubled over in pain. It wasn't it was really paralyzing or anything. I just sort of walked into a table and went, ooh, but I just carried on. But the wildest thing is it left such an impressionable mark on my upper thigh. It's like a horseshoe shaped, and it's also tough, I suppose. You feel my skin around it, and it's kind of softer, and you get to the middle of it, and it's a bit harder than usual, right? Now, it's not something I'm particularly worried about because, in retrospect, looking back, I basically I basically did the equivalent of kneeing a table, but with my thigh. Thigh-ing a table? It doesn't really make sense. And it was the corner of a table, so unsurprisingly, it's left a corner-shaped table corner-shaped indent into my, not indent really, but marking on my thigh. But I will say this is probably one of the longest times I've had a bruise for. That I can recall. it was actually, not it was actually, what am I saying? Well, when I was younger, apparently, I assume, and, kind of confirmed, I used to move around a lot in my sleep, so sometimes I would go to sleep and I just wake up and my parents would be like, why is that a random bruise on I don't know, on your knee or something, or a bruise. It's where did you get that bruise from? And I'm like, I don't know. And almost in retrospect, 90% of the time it would be because I had turned around in my sleep and, I've got a wooden headboard or something on my bed and I just slam into it. I don't notice. And also a lot of times I feel I'm not sure if I'm as sensitive to pain as I should be, which is weird to say. Either that, it's my brain, no, I don't say an extreme degree. I still feel pain, obviously. I still feel the sensation of touch. I don't have that condition where you don't feel physical touch or sensations or anything like that. But so part of me is a little bit suspicious. I'm what if I feel slightly less pain than the average person? Because there's a lot of times where something will happen and I'll just carry on being ow, and then later I'll be whoa, but that developed a pretty nasty bruise or something, just I don't know, walking into something or hitting something. But in that moment I'm just my brain doesn't think much about it. I mean, most of the times it'll probably be I'm distracted by something and be oh, I walked into something, or, but I'm doing something right now. I can't let myself get distracted by, mortal things such as pain. So, you sort of carry on. I mean, this is certainly one of the more extreme examples. And you might be does it hurt or anything? No, it doesn't hurt. Genuinely, I didn't even notice I had a bruise until someone pointed it out to me. It's what's that? How did you get a nasty bruise? And I was how did I get a nasty bruise? I have no idea what bruise you're talking about. And here it is. Just a crazy bruise on my thigh. And it is a bit wild. I think it's still here, I mean, bruises bruises are bursted blood vessels or capillaries or something, right, under the skin. So it's I'm not sure if it's internal bleeding necessarily. I think internal bleeding is probably considerably worse, depending on what. I mean, it's a thing that you hear oh, he's got internal bleeding or something. You hear on shows, and that's something which is got a fatality rate in not seconds, minutes or something, right? Although I don't know, maybe bruising is considered internal bleeding. I'm not really a medical student. I mean, I don't know why I had to be a medical student rather than, you know, anyone in the medical industry, but let's see. What is a bruise? Because in my mind it's bursted capillaries or blood vessels under the skin, but that surely would be internal bleeding, because that would cause like blood to swell up right underneath the skin, which sounds terrible, right? I mean, there's no way that can be good. A bruise, also known as a contusion, is when a body part is injured and blood from the damaged capillaries leaks out. Okay, it is. With no place to go, it gets trapped under the skin, forming a reddish or purplish mark. Okay, so it is blood leaking out, but it's only small blood vessels, I suppose, leaking out. I wonder how the capillaries repair themselves if they're that small, you know? It sounds like it'd be quite difficult to like sort of realign themselves and continue the blood flow. Yeah, again, I'm not a doctor, nor am I like I don't know why I googled it like this, but it says, what is a bruise? I must have accidentally hit caps lock while I was doing this. But yeah, you know a lot of things about how like the different colours that bruises can appear, you know? Like, I think the standard colour for a bruise, like a blackish purple, at least on my skin tone, probably it's different on other skin tones, and that's genuinely not something I've really considered before, but that's probably true, to be honest. But you can also get like these yellowish and greenish bruises, which is sort of just like, oh, you know, how does that work? I mean, blood plasma is sort of like yellowish, isn't it? So is that just like a collation of like blood plasma over red blood cells? I don't really know. I never really considered this. This is me just sort of parroting, well, it's not even parroting because I haven't heard it before, but this is me sort of like propagating made up medical facts which sound plausible enough, but are completely unverified and certainly not something you should take as gospel. Yeah, I don't know. Like, have I had any like majorly bad bruises before? I don't know. I've never had like a black eye or anything like that. You know, my eyes have remained relatively injury free, I suppose, unless you count the fact that I have like pretty terrible eyesight, in which case I guess not. But no, I've never gotten a black eye or that sort of thing. I mean, I never was really that active, like a sporty sort of person. So I think, you know, because of the fact I never really did super physical activities a lot of the time. No, my ex, it's broken. Okay, well, I mean, fine. We'll have to go make another one. Because I never really did physical, like super intense physical activity, I should say most of the time. I remained relatively like injury free. Like, I've never broken a bone. I've dislocated a shoulder many times, but that's probably due to my hypermobility more than my physical activeness level. And you know, I've never gotten a black eye or anything like that, but I have gotten plenty of bruises and cuts and scratches. I don't know, well, what was like a battle scars episode, we're going to talk about like injuries I got or something. I wonder what the worst bruise I ever got was. Like the biggest bruising I've ever got. Like, I don't really do dangerous things, I suppose, most of the time. I don't like tend to do risky things. So if anything I got bruising from, it would certainly have to be like an accident. It's hard to think, like, off the top of my head. Something that made me like super, you know. Actually, this was a super recent one, but for my friend's birthday back in May, we went go-karting, and the place that we did go-karting, like in the last session of the day, was like, normally you pay for like 2 rounds of go-karting. How long were rounds? I don't know. I'm gonna guess at like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something. And you just drive around on cat. I mean, you can go back to like the go-karting episode back in the end of May if you want to find out more details. But I mean, I'm not like super into go-karting, so I'm not like driving all that crazy or fast or anything. But I'm also probably not that good a driver. I don't know how to drive a car in real life, and I don't have that much experience with go-karting, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I remember we were doing a go-karting thing, and we, you know, I didn't actually finish the thing. Normally you buy like 2 sessions, but if you do the last session of the day, you get 3 sessions, and that's basically what we did. We just did 3 sessions, and by the end of like the first session, I was like, oh, I'm getting like kind of tired. By the end of the second session, I was like, I'm like exhausted, and by the third session, I was like, I am dead. I'm like shit, and I'm like shaking. That's perhaps a bit extreme, but like, I feel physically like weak from this. Like, I feel like I've done like a really intense exercise, and then I got home, you know, like I undressed, I like changed into my pajamas, and I looked in the mirror, and I just had this crazy large bruise on like the left. It's not really the shoulder blade area. It's kind of like, you know, okay, start with the shoulder blade, but then come like around and more forward to like the front chest part of your body. It's like on that side area, you know, like between the armpit and shoulder blade, I guess. I just had like an absolutely crazy big bruise on that side, and then like I looked on the other side of my body, like in the exact mirror of that, and I had a crazy big bruise on that side of my body as well. It was wild. I was just like, what on earth? How do I have such massive bruises? And then, you know, in retrospect, it's because of like the sort of ergonomics of the seat of a go-kart that we were sitting in, is that like they slightly adjusted out on the sides, and because, you know, when you're turning you get like the g-force and you're like swinging around into the chair, I was basically like ramming into the bit of a chair that I suppose that stuck out a little bit over and over and over again on like every single turn. And seeing as we did 3 sessions, times that by the number of laps I did, which I don't know how many laps I did. I'm gonna guess I did like 12 laps or something per session. That's like what's 36 times just like ramming into the side of a chair on either side. No, times the number of turns. So probably like 360 times just like hitting the same place over and over again. So the bruising I got was massive. It didn't, it's another thing where like it didn't hurt. Like after the go-karting session, I didn't feel like I didn't feel, wow, I'm in like such pain. I just felt like I was so exhausted. Like I couldn't, I remember when I was doing a go-karting, I was like, I'm so tired. I feel like I can't actually turn the steering wheel anymore. But we kept going. So that in recent memory is some of the biggest bruisings I had. And that was actually like, it was actually surprisingly sore. Like I went to bed and I was like, now I'm like sort of aware of a bruising. I'm like, it feels like what I thought I assumed was my arms or parts of my body, I suppose, aching. It's actually just like bruising, which I suppose I'm in like direct contact with. So yeah, that comes to mind. What else have I got like a massive bruise? I can't really think of something off the top of my head, to be perfectly honest. Hello, Wisp. We're going to probably ignore you, because we're about halfway through the episode. If we see you earlier, then maybe. But alas, it's also a clear night. I wonder if Celeste's here. Yeah. What missions can we do? Okay, well, we're going to chop wood and we can craft things, I suppose. Chop wood, craft things, maybe sell things. Yeah, so, I don't know, bruises are like, you know, they're not exactly the most pleasant experience in the world, certainly. I would still rate a bruise over a cut, you know, if you were like, hey dear darling, you're going to get injured one way or another, would you rather be bruised or would you rather have a cut? I'm going to be honest, I don't know, I guess a bruise, I would choose a bruise. Mainly because I feel like a cut can get infected. You know, that's something you got to manage, you know, the bleeding and the scabbing or whatever. While bruise is sort of like, it's just passively there. Like, all you need to do with a bruise is kind of like let it be most of the time. I mean, if it certainly does hurt a lot, you put it on like ice, or if it's swelling, right? I don't know, I'm not a doctor. But, yeah. If anything, you know, bruises kind of, at least in my experience, don't really hurt until you touch them. And then, you know, they're quite sore. I suppose they're tender is perhaps how to describe it. Which I suppose is ironic because this bruise I have right now is very much not tender. It's like firm, I guess. I was going to say turgid, and I was like, that's like a horrid word to use for this descriptor. But you know what I mean, right? I don't know, it's just weird. You know what, actually, because I used to, like, take lessons snowboarding and skiing on some dry slopes, which are used to be close to where I live. Well, close to where I used to live. Let's think about phrasing. But and I used to get like reasonably bruised and like after those. But yeah, it's weird because I suppose you don't really sort of notice it. I suppose because, you know, the entire centre where I was like skiing and snowboarding and was like ice cold, right, to preserve the snow. Or to preserve the ice, or maybe it doesn't even need to be like that. I don't know. I've never really thought about it. So you don't really feel it, I suppose. It's sort of like you're ice packing yourself. But you fall over all the time, I suppose, while you're doing it. You know, you get bumps, you get bruises all the time because you're just like, you're skiing and you go, oh, whack. Or something like that. You know, you go a little bit too fast, you're a little bit too out of control, something like that. Bada bing, bada boom. You get bruised. But I can't think of a situation I've been like incredibly badly bruised in. Which, you know, I count myself lucky, certainly, for that. I suppose that's probably part of my risk-averse nature, you know, also the fact that I tend to not have many physical activities where you would be at risk of, like, getting injured. I'm not going to say it's, like, because I'm more careful than the average person. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's just more like, it's sort of like a numbers game, right? It's sort of like based around exposure, and the things I expose myself to generally are not like that high injury risk. Probably, or at least the injury risk is not something which results in bruising, I imagine, most of the time. But yeah, I don't really know what I was going with this. There's almost certainly been more times where I've just like walked into something. I think that's my number one cause of bruises, is I just walk into something. Now, I wouldn't consider myself like a clumsy or like a klutz or anything like that, but you know, I suppose it's just but the times I do, you know, something clumsy, aka walk into something, is pretty extreme. I would say like a good 99.9% of the time I don't walk into a table or something, but that 0.1% of the time I do walk into a table, it's just like poof. It's like explosive. It's like, why was I, you know, walking to a table? Why did I walk into it so hard? I don't know, but you know, that's certainly going to leave a mark. And this, in a rare case, where it did. So when did I actually get this bruise? I think it was last Tuesday. So it's been around over a week. And it has healed considerably, because it used to be like the entire thing was like a blackish, purplish splodge with like green undertones. Now it's like a horseshoe shape, is probably how I describe it. So I've seen that like middle part has healed. Maybe that's why it feels so firm. It's like, that's a healing process, right? Isn't it true that that's how it works with muscles? That's like how you build muscles. You have to break your muscles and then they like rebuild themselves stronger or something. I don't know. That's what my gymnastics teacher told me when I was much, much younger. So that's been retained in my memory ever since. Is it right? I've got no clue. Yeah, bruising. Hopefully you know, haven't been seriously bruised or injured, I suppose, in your life. You know, bruising, it's not exactly fun, but I suppose on a list of injuries, it's, you know, compared to like breaking a bone, I guess it's okay. I don't know why we're rating injuries next necessarily, but yeah, I don't know. What's your number one cause, I suppose, of bruising? It's got to be walking into tables for me or something. I feel like I don't do that all the time, but like I think about the times I injured myself recently, and it feels like it's walking into tables. Because I also did like a few months ago, I just walked into it, but it didn't leave a mark as bad as this one. It left just like a sort of like small purplish mark. I was just kind of surprised at like how long this bruise has lasted. It's definitely like the longest a bruise has ever lasted. What the craziest part is this bruise is actually itchy, which is probably the first time I've ever had that. Because I remember I was scratching it sort of just like subconsciously like earlier today, and I was like, whoa, it's actually like genuinely itchy, which is weird. I don't know if that's bad. Maybe I should Google that. Just to make sure it's not like anything bad. It's like, whoa, okay, this is actually something serious. Bruise is itchy. Your skin may be dry if you've been avoiding using moisturizers on a tender bruise. I mean, I don't really use moisturizer on my like thighs, I guess. High levels of bilirubin are known to cause itching. There's increased circulation to the damaged area. Okay. So bruises actually do itch. Not just due to dry skin and the healing process itself, but also because it releases stuff which can be known to cause itching. Had no idea. That's genuinely interesting. But yeah, I don't know. No, I mean, this bruise will probably heal up within the next week or so, I'd imagine. I mean, it's shrinking. So, yeah, I don't know. Bruises. Don't walk into tables is my moral lesson, my moral givings and teachings I'm going to impart on you today. But on that note, I'm going to round this episode up here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been there, darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Twitter, Discord down below. Hope we see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now. No, it's a very weak bye-bye for now. I'm just tired, okay?